Good evening. Welcome. We are indeed thankful that we're able to come this evening in the middle of the week and look in the Word of Yah. And tonight we want to look at the book of Psalm, or at least one portion of that psalm, and that is Psalm chapter 2. But before we look at the psalm, I want to premise that with the second Corinthians chapter 5, and we will read from verse 10. That Second Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10. And the word reads, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of the Messiah, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or evil. Knowing therefore the terror of the master, we persuade men, but we are made manifest unto Yahweh, and Amos also are made manifest in your consciences. I trust also are made manifest in your consciences." So as we read that passage, there is an inescapable reality that presents itself to us. It says everyone who has ever lived, everyone who has come through the form of human protoplasm, that person must come before the judgment seats of the Messiah. So we see here that judgment is inescapable. And with that thought in mind, it makes sense to be obedient to Yah. We can't ignore that fact. Every man who has his name in the Lamb's Book of Life and beyond, every person who has ever lived, who has ever come through the womb, must face the judgment seat of Yah. So if we know that, if we understand that there is no escape from that reality, how should we live then? How? How must we live having understood that statement indelibly placed in the Word, replicated by readers who have looked at that? How must we live? So with that thought in mind, let's go to our study tonight. It's a messianic psalm, and it looks at the coming and the reigning of the Messiah. It is the event of all events. All religions and all believers are looking for this particular event, the coming of the Messiah and his reign on the earth for 1,000 years before we step out of time and step into eternity. But it's a kind of interrogative psalm, because it starts with a question. So, from a grammatical point of view, it starts with this interrogative mood. The psalmist, right, and we are led to believe this is David. Why do the heathens rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Even in that first verse, the writer here, David, the psalmist, he seems struck by the incredulity of man. Why are you raging? Why are you conceiving vain thoughts? He wants to know that. Why do the heathen rage? Why do the Gentiles do the things that they do? The kings of the earth. And he's getting closer now because he's naming the people. He's putting them in categories. He's saying the leaders of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed. You get the impression here there is a kind of higher echelon of conspiracy. The leaders, the king, they take counsel among themselves against Yahweh. And so David in his first verse here is saying, why do they do this? The incredulous nature of this doesn't make sense. They take counsel against Yah and his anointed. It is foolish. As if they come together in large groups, whether it be G7, G8, or whatever group they come in, the leaders of this world, if they come in great numbers, they might outpower the Messiah. It is an asinine thought to rebel in this way against Yah. Listen to what they say in verse 3. Let us break the bands asunder and cast away the cords from us. Let's abandon his laws. We don't want his yoke. In spite of the fact that he says, my yoke is easy, take my yoke. They say, we want to yoke ourselves with each other, but not with you. We want to break your bands because your laws are too restrictive. That's what they're saying. When you said that you should not commit adultery, we think that's too restrictive. This is a free society, and we want our freedom to do as we please. So say these people. We believe, so they say, that it's all right for one man and another man to come together in a union called marriage. But Yah says, I made man and woman, male and female, and for that reason they will come together in union, not otherwise. They say, we want to break that band. And on the 26th of June, 2015, you remember that? The Supreme Court of America decided it would break that band. And so Psalm 2 here speak to that occasion. They say, we will break the band. We do not want his law. They are too restrictive. He said, remember the seventh day to keep it holy. They say, we don't want that. We want to do what we want to do, and we can come anytime and worship. Any day is a day. Let's break his band. They say we want to be able to abort our children at any time, whatever the semester or trimester. We want to break his band because his yoke is too much for us. He's trying to tell us to do things that we don't want to do. But I recall in Exodus chapter 19, 5 and 6, when Yah called Moshe to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt, he called them together, that mixed multitude, and he wanted them to know that I'm not simply calling you to come out and do your own thing. I want to teach you how to live. And therefore, I'm going to speak in your hearing the precept of my principles, the way you should live. If therefore you shall obey me, you will be to me a kingdom of priests. And they in faith said, everything Yah says, we will do. But they did not do what they said they would. Their word was not their bond. But Yah's word, according to Isaiah 55 and verse 11, it will not return to him void. Whatever Yah says he will do, he does it. And the word, according to John chapter 10 and verse 35, it will not be broken. The word cannot be broken. So we know that it cannot be broken, and Yah's word will never return to him void. It will establish, accomplish that which it sets out to do. Because the word is Yeshua. And when Aleph speaks, Beit, the Son, is the one who does the work. That's why Yeshua says, I never did anything. Everything I do, my Father did it in me. So if we understand that in the context of what we read earlier in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 10, knowing that if we don't obey, you're going to have to stand before the judgment seat of Yah. How will you answer? Can you not see the futility of it? Yah says, keep the Sabbath, and you on the marketplace on the Sabbath. You're at the ball game on the Sabbath. You're at the gym, working out, playing a round of golf because you want to break the bands. Can you not see the category of people here? And can they not see the seriousness of this? Because have we not read in Ezekiel chapter 18, 20, the soul that sinneth, it will die? Can we not understand? And we're not here talking about the first death. We're talking about the second death. Can we not see that? Let's break their bands asunder and cast away the cords from us. But I believe that that's not the only unsolved problem that the world has, that the heathens have. Because we read in Revelation, let's go there. Revelation 6, Revelation chapter 6, and verse 16 says, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us. These are the same people. They're saying, now fall on us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, from the wrath of the Lamb. They understood that they would have to face the Lamb. And they also understood that obedience now will determine where they spend eternity. Where they will go, whether it's in a lake of fire or they will reign with him in the kingdom. Verse 4, chapter 2 of Psalm. He that sitteth in the heavens, that's Yah, shall laugh. Yahweh shall have them in derision. The psalmist want you to know, Yah here is not itching. He's not scratching. He's not worrying himself about their unbelief. He's suffering. And he knows that all of them will have to come before the judgment seat. Abraham asks the question, will the judge of all the earth not do right? Oh, yes, he will. So he laughed. It's not a mocking laugh. No, it's not. Because it's not his will that any should perish at all. But he is laughing at the futility, the incredulity of their actions. That if they were to align themselves with each other, they could overpower the sovereign Yah. Yahweh said to Noah, I'm going to make a covenant with you. Chapter 9 of Genesis. And he said, in order to consolidate that covenant, I'm going to put a bow in the sky. That covenant is for all men. It will indicate to you whenever you see it that I'm not going to destroy the world again with water. But the unbelief of Nimrod and his man thought, we're going to break his band. just in case he changes his mind and he does the same thing again, we're going to build a tower. We're going to do that. And we know the story very well that he confused their language. He confused it. And so the word says, verse 5, then shall he speak unto them. How? In his wrath. And vex them in his sore displeasure. And how does he speak in his wrath? Let's pull up on the historical narratives, how he speaks. Moses, go down to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And I'm going to show my glory to Pharaoh. Pharaoh in his heart said, I'm going to break his band. I will not let the people go. David says, why do they do these things? Why do they rage? Why do they rebel? Yah says, I want you to keep all the feast days because in them you learn the mechanics of salvation. The churches teach that we're not going to keep them. So even the church, even the denominational churches are breaking the band. But it's as if it's okay. And it doesn't cause them to even think as to what answer they will give to him. So he speaks to Pharaoh by way of 10 plagues. Yah was not there in Egypt scratching his head, finding out, well, what next do I do to get this man to set my people free? He said he will do it, but just give him time. And at the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh decided to let the people go. That's how Yah speaks in his wrath. Sometimes he uses nature, earthquakes, tornadoes. He used the flood. And of course, there's a promise of fire to come. So what's sure here is that it's going to get very warm. In Deuteronomy, Yah says, there's blessings and there's cursing. Choose blessings. And one is struck to understand why most people choose cursing. I believe everyone holds themselves a duty of care to ask the question, where will I spend eternity? Where? Because your now is what determines your hereafter. So David is asking, why do you do this? Why? And people invariably answer, well, that's your truth and that's your religion. And my church teaches this, and my church teaches that. And that's okay. No, it's not okay. This is what Yah says. He laughs at your derision, at your foolishness. He laughs. Verse 6, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. It doesn't matter what you say or do. It's going to rain in Zion. It's going to rain. I will declare the decree, Yahweh had said unto me, thou art my son. This day have I begotten thee. Ask for me, and I shall give thee the heathens for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges on the earth, serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and he perish from the way. When his wrath is kindled, but a little, blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So when he opens that book of life, and if your name is not there because of the rebellion you caused, you participated in while you lived, you joined and aligned yourself with people who said, we will not obey him. You know, there are many who will tell you, oh, well, you know, I believe in Yah. He said, if you obey me, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And so the question that bothers me is that how is it that you know that your disobedience will lead to the second death? You know that. You also know that it will etch your name out of the book of life. You know that. That's not guesswork. That's hardly algebra. It's not calculus. If you obey me, then that will give you access to the tree of life. If you don't, then you walk in, even now, into a lake of fire. You know all that. And you still say you're not going to do it. I just don't get it. And of course, there was a time that we didn't know, and he winks at our ignorance. There was that time. But now, when? Now, he speaks to us, doesn't he? And he says that all men, come with me to Hebrews. chapter 1. Elohim in times gone past, sundry times, and in divers manners, spoke in times past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in the last days, the nowadays, spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the world, who being in the brightness of his splendor, and the express image of the person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he hath by himself purged out sins, sat down at the right hand, the majesty and I. This is who we have to contend with, the Son. Because in John 5:22, he tells us, the Father judgeth no man, and is given all judgment to his Son. Now, in Psalm 2, we read earlier, we were made to understand by the psalmist that the rebellion is against the Father and against his anointed Son. So help me to understand this. The Father says the Son is the judge. We're also made to understand that the Son is the attorney. He's the mediator between man and Yah. Now, he's the one who gives us access to the Father. So imagine yourself charged with a crime. You go to court, you know the case warrants a heavy sentence. In this case, it's a capital punishment. It's a capital crime. Because what we're dealing with here is life and death. That's what sin does. The wages of sin is death. And he's offering us the gift of eternal life. And the only way you can get off this case is through your attorney, the one mediator between man and Yah. That's Messiah. And this is the man you're making rebellion against. It doesn't make sense. And what's even more interesting, you go to court and you realize that your attorney happens to be a judge. You can't lose the case. That is, unless you fire your attorney. Your attorney, Yeshua HaMashiach, also happens to be your judge. John 5:22. And you fire your attorney in a crisis. What then do you expect? It doesn't make sense. So David says, why do they do this? Why? Why? You know that if you don't obey Yah, you don't keep his Sabbath, you don't keep his feast days, you don't obey his 10 commandments, the precepts of life, he established 2 principles, 2 pillars of truth in paradise, a Sabbath and marriage. And you believe you could just walk in and out of marriage, sacred institution, 3, 4, 5 times, and you have 6, 7 different relationships that you call your husband or your wife. Does it make sense? Shall I not remind you of John chapter 4? A woman comes to the well, and she's been through 5 marriages, and the man she was now living with is not her own. My question to you is, how can a person who has been married 5 times not have a husband? How? Have you ever considered that thought? Because the intent, the divine will of Yah, from Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24, he says, for this cause a man should leave his mother and his father and be joined together with the wife of his youth. So if you abandon that wife, that husband, and marry someone else while that husband, that wife is still alive, you're an adulterer. I know your church might not teach it that way, but the word does. That's why Yeshua said, this is an adulterous generation. Because people are walking hand in hand with another person's husband or another person's wife. And the church, the light that's supposed to sit upon that hill, that incandescent light, that finds itself in a dark place, gross darkness. And so they come together. They take counsel, even with their elders, with their pastors, and they say, you know, that man down there or that person there is saying that because I've been married 3 or 4 times, then it's not acceptable. Said it's not acceptable. What did Yeshua say to the woman at the well? Don't do it again. What did he say to the woman who was caught in adultery? Go and sin no more. What is adultery? If 2 people who are married step outside of the realm of that covenant relationship, you have committed adultery. That's what adultery is. So if you are married, so-called, to another person's wife or husband, and you're still living with them, I don't care how muddy the water gets, because what do we have? Children. Go and sin no more. So David says, why do you do it? Why do the heathens rage? Why? And so my counsel tonight is, let's do like the woman at the well. Let's stop the foolishness that we're doing and think we can rationalize the truth. Oh, I keep the Sabbath, but I don't have to, go to church. I keep it. The Sabbath is sunset to sunset. The sacred hours. Oh, but what about the feast days? Leviticus 23 says they must be kept. So who is it you believe? Regardless of the fact that you may well attend church every week. David says, you have taken counsel against Yah because you're not doing what he says. You're breaking his band. He has put his principles together and you're breaking them down. You're not the witness that you think you are. So let us look at it, examine ourselves in the light of the world, and be obedient to Yah. There's no other way. Obedience is better than sacrifice. King Saul tried it, didn't work for him. Others have tried it, didn't work. Cain, the offering you bring is not accepted. Why don't you do it like your brother did? And like so many Cains, we get angry. And though we don't slay people physically, we slay them with our tongues and with our attitudes. And we kill our brothers because their offering is better than ours. Why do we do that? Why do the heathens rage? The question lingers. And the answer is simple. Jeremiah tells us the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. May we therefore come before Yah in penitent heart and contriteness and accept the fact that we have one plea and that's guilty, but ask for his mercy. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.